Appreciate it.
7772.
Next item on the agenda is the reallocation of funding for Department of Corrections capital projects. Director of Department of Corrections, Ms. Tyler.
I'm just going to stay here for the next one anyway.
Good evening, Chris Tyler, Director of Wicomico County Department of Corrections. We are asking to move some funds from the flooring project into the mezzanine guard shack project and control system replacement project, which were, obviously, when they were bid out, it was over almost 18 months ago. So when we got the new prices, it had gone up some. And the flooring, we were able to be a little bit ahead of the game, get a little bit more square footage done for the price that we had. So we have a little bit of money in there to play with right now. So we're asking to move the money from that project to cover the updated expenses on the other two projects.
56 is actually a savings from from the original program.
So
Project.
it's just a shift. The total dollar amount between all three projects would stay the same. It just, we would be adding to two projects and deducting from one. So we're not asking the county for any additional funding. We're asking to reallocate the funding that has already been provided.
And I guess the flooring upgrade will come into the fiscal '25 budget.
So the flooring upgrade has been an ongoing project, and as Chris mentioned, we've just been putting kind of a dollar amount in there, and we've been bidding sections, and we've been able to get further in the sections than we thought with the original money that we have. So we don't feel that we're going to be put behind on the project or not get done what we thought we would with the funding that we have. But these two projects are safety issues, and so we feel that it's most advantageous to the county to reallocate these funds and, again, not ask for anything more, but we'd still be able to accomplish the projects that we want with the same funding.
It requires a public hearing, and we can have that November 21st at 10 a.m.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. What's the next one?
Next item on the agenda is a discussion of the proposed fire service agreement. We have several guests here tonight. Very patient, too. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mayor Heath, how are you?
Do a backup, right? Yeah.
We'd like you just, if you could introduce yourselves just for the public who's watching. They know most of you regardless, but still, thank you.
Jack Heath, Acting Mayor, City of Salisbury.
Darren Scott, Acting Fire Chief, City of Salisbury.
Andy Kitzrow, City Administrator, City of Salisbury.
I think everyone knows who I am. All right.
You have the floor, if you'd like to.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm actually very appreciative of you guys putting this on the agenda item. I know this is a one-year agreement, so really I've asked for council's input on this. I think it's super important. You guys have constituents to answer to, and so I think that it's very important that we all talk about the fire service agreement. I do want to clarify something, though. It was brought to my attention that at a municipal meeting, it was brought up that the county executive did not talk to any of the fire chiefs about this, and I just wanted to clarify that that is not true. So when this was first brought to my attention, the fire chiefs were actually the first people that I talked to. The city of Salisbury, I didn't know how our relationship was going to be at the very beginning, and so I brought in the fire chiefs because for the surrounding areas of Delmar, Fruitland, Hebron, and Parsonsburg. And I asked them all if they could expand their services into the city. I wanted to shrink the city's fire service district at first, even offering more money to each station. All stations said they absolutely could not cover any more territory. So from the very beginning, the fire chiefs in the surrounding areas were very aware of what was going on in the city of Salisbury. From that, we have gone back and forth on numerous things. On numerous items back and forth. We've asked for capital, we've asked for numbers, we've asked for a lot of different things. So there's been a lot of research for months and months and months before it is put in front of you. As we looked at the call history, and what I'm referencing is the sheet that I gave you that looks like this. I think you all have this in your brief books. But the sheet that I'm referencing, we have 14 fire districts in Wicomico County. We have 14 fire districts. Each fire department covers one of them, except for the city of Salisbury, which covers 3 of those fire districts. And so what we are asking in this fire service agreement for 1 year, we know that there's a SWOT analysis coming. We're not really sure what that's going to, the information that's going to give us. But if you look at this sheet, which was in the brief book, and I'm not sure if audience has it or not, if we look, the fire station is listed, and then the number of calls is listed for 20, and I'm using 2022 data because that's what we paid, the last payment that we made to the city of Salisbury. So I wanted to make sure that we have the right data. The number of calls that have been done, the allocated money to that station, and what that price per call was. So if you look at the city of Salisbury, Station 1, they, for 2022, they answered 1,507 calls at Station 1. This is not self-dispatch calls. This is not them coming out to the county. This is literally them serving county residents that live in that fire district. If you look at Station 2, 1,117 calls. Salisbury Station 16, 1,726. Now, I'm not going to read this chart to you, but if you look, those are some of our top fire departments that serve county residents. So they're not serving city residents, even though city residents are county residents, but we are talking about just our county residents, the ones that are on water and sewer, the ones that are your constituents. So I want you to look at those numbers, and then if you look at the allocated money that we have given each station, we gave Salisbury $1 million, which is correct, but if you divide that amongst their 3 stations, that's $333,333. So if you look at the price per call, each call for Salisbury costed them, $221, $298, $193. If you go down and, just looking at data, we gave all of our volunteer fire departments $562,000. We upped it this past year to $668,000. So if you look at their price per call, if you look at something like Hebron, 1,217 calls, it's pretty comparable, $461. But if you look at Powellville, they did 147 calls, and each call costed $3,823 when you divide that up. So what we are asking is that, and what we think is fair, is that the city of Salisbury, I don't care what kind of relationship has been before. I don't care that they have paid fire departments, or paid firemen. I don't care that they have a fire museum. They serve county residents, they serve your constituents, they serve your voters. And we are asking that they are treated the same as our volunteers. I know they can't fundraise, our volunteers can fundraise, but we are looking to treat them and give all 14 fire districts the same allocation of money. And I'm going to turn that, I think I kind of summarized where we're going with this and what the justification is, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kitzrow if you want to add anything to that.
Thank you. You did a great job summarizing all of that. So I'll defer my time if Mayor Heath or Acting Chief Darren wants to add to it, but thank you for providing those numbers. Just, again, for some additional numbers, the calls within the Salisbury Fire District that were in the county area was 37%, so over a third of the total calls in the county were in the Salisbury Fire Service District.
What was the percentage again?
37%. And of the total allocation of funding for 2022 calls, we received 12% of the funding after providing 37% of the calls. So again, looking to be treated equally.
know a lot of the argument is that Salisbury's one station. I hear that a lot. Salisbury's one station, Willard's is one station, Mardella is one station, but they cover 3 districts. If Mardella or Hebron or Parsonsburg or Fruitland covered more than one fire district, I would have no problem multiplying that number. Salisbury covers 3, and they serve county residents. And so our county residents deserve that service. And, I think that this has gone on long enough, and I think that when you look at the numbers like this, I don't see it equitable. I don't. And I think Josh's constituents deserve the same fire service that your constituents do, Shane. And so when you look at it that way, we're not asking for Salisbury to get more, even though in some of the aspects, they cover more calls. We're not asking for more. We're just asking it for it to be equal of what we give. So I am not looking at it as city versus county versus Willards versus Fruitland. We have 14 fire districts, and right now we equally allocate it, and that's what we're asking to do for this agreement.
Yeah, the only thing I would point out, which I know you understand, for the last 10 months, we have been providing service to the citizens of Wicomico County outside the city of Salisbury. We do not have a signed agreement. As mayor, it's my obligation to make sure that we are reimbursed for those calls that we have made. I think the numbers speak for themselves. And I will tell you that the county exec is correct. When we started out, it wasn't very fun. But I think we listened to each other. We had several meetings, and I think what we've come up with is reasonable. The numbers don't lie. And John, I will tell you, I completely support the SWOT analysis, and I think it's something that needs to get done because as I've stated several times before, the model that is currently in place is not functioning or cannot function anymore. And down the road, something has to be done. So I agree wholeheartedly. But I can't allow us to keep going after 10 months without a signed contract or agreement. Thank you.
And the only last thing I'd like to add in is this concept of equal shares did exist previously in the 2010 fire service agreement. A very similar contract between the city and the county existed for 6 years that had the city, different stations, volunteer companies receiving equal compensation as the rest of the fire department. We moved away from that in 2017, so we're not reinventing the wheel. We're looking at returning to a model that we think is more appropriate at this time.
Kind of phased it out in 2017 on a 3-year cycle. And we did it because we felt that stipends, I think, is somewhat of an antiquated system that we're doing, even with our own volunteer firefighters in the county. It's an antiquated system. So I think the true benefit we saw for the 2017 agreement was the fact that we actually had an evaluation of what the costs were for fire, what the costs were for EMS transport, and what the costs were for EMS non-transport. And we applied those towards the number of calls that were made in that prior year. And it seemed to me like a very good formula. The one thing that wasn't done over that time period was that there were no evaluations as far as increases in the actual cost per service. But we just adjusted that last year when we adjusted it from, I think the total was about $766,000 is what we came up with the prior year, and we adjusted that to a total of $1 million. And it was somewhat of an arbitrary figure, but at the time, and it's part of a discussion you and I had, Jack, when we were in the executive's office, it's about a 30% increase, and we felt that that was a substantial increase. So I was a bit surprised. I think some of the council members were a bit surprised when all of a sudden we went from a 30% increase not that long ago, and we approved it in the last budget cycle, and now we're looking at doubling what was just a 30% increase is now an additional 100% increase on top of that. And The reason for our concerns and the reason for the SWOT analysis is because we're trying to see exactly what Wicomico's role is with all of our fire departments, as well as with the city of Salisbury. And I don't know how far-fetched this is. Maybe you can help me with this, Darren. But from what I understand, EMS calls alone are probably 3 to 1 as opposed to fire service calls.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so we're hoping that maybe with the SWOT analysis, and it could be a bit far-fetched, but we're hoping that with the SWOT analysis, it can help the county evaluate how we can better create more efficient services. In other words, maybe the county wants to take on EMS units. Maybe we would want to have an EMS unit on the west side of Salisbury and another EMS unit on the east side of Salisbury, if that's what the SWOT analysis says. And I think it would benefit the county as a whole to make those investments. And it would also relieve the burden from the city of Salisbury at the same time. So that's what I was hoping that we could do in the direction we might want to go. Yes, Jack?
Yeah, I just have to point out that during the SWOT analysis, the amount of people outside the city limits that are having heart attacks and strokes, they don't care about that SWOT analysis. They care about their health and safety. In addition to that, if you look at our calls, we need to cover them. The one thing that we provide that is not evaluated, and I defy anybody to put a value on it, response time. When one of the calls come in inside the city or within our fire district, they can expect a response time around 4.5 minutes. Having been a fireman and ridden in an ambulance for 20 years, I can tell you that if you're having a stroke, if you don't get there in a certain amount of time, what's the current thing, 4 minutes? 4 minutes, that person is likely not to have a good outcome. If we go to a mutual aid model, now the mutual aid runs and we would continue mutual aid. If we had that, there are 2 3-minute, correct? 2 3-minute time periods before mutual aid comes out. So that's 6 minutes before we leave the barn. That's definitely not a good outcome. And that's the service that your citizens, that is your obligation to protect and serve, we are covering, and we have these figures to show it. And I think if you look down the numbers, there's another problem that you've got here based on the number of calls and the average price per call. And this does not include service level response time.
So today, there was a structure fire on the east side of Wicomico County where all 3 of our duty crews were out to assist Parsonsburg. That left the city empty. Thank goodness we had some office staff. We had a call, fire up near Wawa North. We did have some office staff that could cover. Had it been a night or weekend, we would have had to wait for another department outside of the county to come in. This happens all the time. Hebron, Delmar, Fruitland, Parsonsburg, they all come to Salisbury. Salisbury goes to those locations as well. We help each other. It shouldn't be a volunteer career thing. It should be a fire department thing. It shouldn't be city, county. It should be about the fire service that protects the citizens of Wicomico County. That's what we all need to look at.
Yeah, I understand that 100% as well. I think maybe what the difference is here is in so much that we recognize Salisbury's value. We're trying to get, I think, a better grip on exactly the cost per call, things like that. I mean, we started out at 300, as you know, and I say 300. We started out as 300 on fire. We started out on 100 with non-transport, and then we had 405 on a transport. And then within this last cycle, based on the 2022 call volume, we adjusted that number to 366 for fire, from 300 to 366, We adjusted from 100 to 122, and we went from 405 to 422 respectively on these increases, and this was not so long ago. And we applied the 2022 numbers to that, which is how we originally came up with the $1 million for this last cycle. Again, if you were to try to look to continue with any semblance of call per service fees, in order to match the 200, the number that we had just increased, the number and the increase that we just made, which totally was about a 30% increase last year, if we would have to double that. So the fire service calls, which were 366, adjusted to 366 from 300, would now be at 732. And likely, the EMS goes from 122 to 244 and from 424 to 848. I'm just wondering how everything doubled in the period of a year.
It didn't double, it was always underfunded. It's been underfunded for years.
But the 366, the figures I gave you on the 366.
That's what we agreed to, but that wasn't.
That was just last
That never
year.
covered our costs. So, yeah, and I know what we paid previously, and I know what we agreed to, but those agreements are over, and we are talking about what our needs are now moving forward. So the $2 million round figures that we need is if you want us to cover 4,300 calls for county residents.
Plus, we looked at, so the original number, so the fire service agreement, this final one that was given, there's been like, how many drafts? Like
8.
Yeah, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of drafts. The original draft did do the price per call. When we did the price per call, I only had about 6 months of data at that point in time, but we just multiplied that by 2. So we took the new number that Salisbury felt the price per call should be, and that actually ended up equaling, if we took the data from January to June and then multiplied it by 2 just as a projection, it ended up being around $1.9 million. So for their price per call. So I understand that their price per call has been increased to $366 or whatever, but it's now going up again. So the price is increasing. So I'm not really sure. I don't know if I have the ability to say we're not paying that price. Because when you look at the price per call of Allen, their price per calls are $3,267 per call. The price per call of Sharptown is $2,351. And that's not to say that Sharptown calls are not just as important. They are. But what we're asking is just that Salisbury be treated just like the county volunteer fire departments, and that they get the same allocation from the county because they're serving county residents. We're trying to move away from the price per call model. Because it's easier, honestly, for budgeting purposes, because we can budget that money at the beginning of the year, and we know this is what it's going to cost, rather than it fluctuating, going back and forth. It might be higher, it might be lower.
Maybe easier, but why wouldn't you stick with a cost per call basis? Why do you just say we're gonna
Because
call
we're moving,
100,000?
but we don't do a price per call
We're
for our
gonna-
volunteers, so we're treating them like the volunteers. Like, we don't do a price per call for our
Right, but it's an
volunteers.
antiquated system, and you were trying to take an antiquated system and use those same parameters towards this, as opposed to a formula, and that's why we went to a formula in 2017, because that is the new trend.
And
Not
I
falling
appreciate,
back on the
I
cycle.
appreciate that. What I'm saying is that for this one-year agreement, we would like to keep the price the same for the volunteers. So if we are going to allocate $668,000 for every volunteer department, I would like to allocate that for the city of Salisbury because they're county residents. And just for 1 year. But I'm bringing it in I'll get to you in 1 second, James, I promise. But when I bring it forward to you, if I sign it, I don't want this argument during budget time. So that's why we're talking about it now. But go ahead, James, sorry.
Yeah, so okay, so the city's not going to charge us per call after this agreement?
For just for 2020, we're talking about, we're trying to figure out how to pay them because we're now 11 months in, January to November,
Right,
with
right.
they don't know what they're getting paid for these calls that they've done.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out, so, okay, we just say we're going to give them the same as we give every other volunteer fire department.
For 1 year.
Right, so will we continue to get charged the $300 or
No.
$200?
It would just be a flat
Okay,
fee
so it'll be a flat rate.
Right.
It would probably be a lot easier on Pam, I would imagine.
for 1 year. And if the SWOT analysis comes back and says you need to give a flat funding plus a price per call, or if they say that, then we'll look at it again,
you're-
but just for this.
And you're saying, so when you do the math and you multiply what we pay per call right now for all the calls outside of the city and the county residents, we get around,
1.9
so what we're,
projection.
so it's pretty much the same number, they just want it up front instead of getting it on a per call basis.
Right, exactly. They would just get flat funding to
Guaranteed
win.
number, you're right.
Yeah, the guaranteed number as opposed to.
Well, I imagine it saves you a lot of time because you have to do all the paperwork, saying, okay, this happened here, this happened there.
It really doesn't, because we'll be doing this again this time next year, because this
No,
is
I mean,
only a
if-
1 year
I-
agreement,
What I
but
mean
yes.
is if you did a per call basis, it's more time consuming to.
It is, and you have to make sure that your numbers align. So like we have Lorenzo like lining up, with the city and making sure that the calls are,
Well, my parents live out by the airport, and, Salisbury services my parents' house. And, they've actually had to use the ambulance a few times, and Salisbury was able to respond. Thank you guys very much. And not that Parsonsburg couldn't respond, it's just that Salisbury is just was really, really quick. And I can see that being everywhere around the city. I mean, we have county residents that literally live, as Josh stated, in the city, and it's surrounded by city, but it's county. So, I mean, they are county residents, and we would be giving the same money that we give every other fire department. The question is obviously we can afford it because we're paying it right now through the per call basis, but I mean, that's just something, we can absolutely afford this, right? I mean.
well, I actually just said that to Pam. So she said, do you want me to stay? So, I mean, do you want to? You're not a seat.
Good evening again. So, based on the necessity to cover the cost of fire service for county residents, we feel it is an appropriate number to give each of them $668,000, and that we will make sure it works for the fiscal '25 budget. We will have to take that into consideration with all of our other costs, but we feel that this is an important factor. I mean, every city resident is also a county resident, but we're just talking on these numbers for county residents only. And if you look at the sheet that was provided to council, other than like one department, every other department besides the three in the city are getting paid more per call. So we are asking for our county residents who live in the fire districts of the city calls to receive the same coverage and the same benefit as the rest of the county residents within the other 11 districts. We will ensure that this number is available to us in the fiscal '25 budget.
I'll just, I guess, I think most everything has been said. I don't mind moving forward with a 1 year agreement, but, first of all, as a city taxpayer, and I'm not sure if I'm the only city taxpayer up here, but, I've been paying my fair share and then some, and then some, and then some for county residents. And it's unfair for folks like me to continue to pay for others. So I want that solved regardless wherever we go forward.
And that is one of the benefits of, we feel that the SWOT analysis will come out, yes. Is this the most appropriate method for long-term? No, but we're not asking for this to be a 5-year deal. We're asking for this to be a 1-year deal for us to receive a SWOT analysis, to be able to analyze that SWOT analysis and to figure out funding associated with that for the county residents as a whole. We need to make sure that we have coverage for our residents, and that's why we're asking that to kind of solve this issue now, so that when we come to you in the budget with $668,000 for each of them, that it's already been discussed and we have signed the contract.
are there any other municipalities that pay in any kind of way? Is it possible to have that as a revenue option for for the other, I mean, I guess many of them don't have money and maybe only Fruitland's the only city, but if there's 8 municipalities in the county.
Again, that is what, at this moment, I would say they probably don't have the financial wherewithal. I am making an assumption. But again, most of the other ones are not, well, let me rephrase that. All of the other ones have a paid portion for their ambulance, but do not have a paid portion for their fire. And so, again, using this SWOT analysis that the state is providing for us at no cost to the county will help us determine what the future is for fire service and EMS service for county residents, whether or not they live in Fruitland, the city of Salisbury, or an unincorporated area.
Okay, and so just to be clear, we're going to go, so from my own understanding, is everyone under agreement that a formula is where we are going after this 1 year?
We don't know. It does depend on what the
It's
SWOT
based on what the
analysis
SWOT analysis comes. My guess is that they would probably recommend something different than what we have. Could they recommend that everybody get a base funding and then a formula? Yes. Could they recommend that all we do is a formula? Yes. Could it be somewhere, another hybrid that I'm not thinking about? Yes. But looking at what is currently in place, we are asking every fire district to receive the same thing for fiscal '25 until we can start making long-term decisions based on the SWOT analysis.
Okay, and just to be clear in my position for anyone who cares, which really shouldn't be anybody, but I am only supporting this one time for a simple allotment. Otherwise, we got to get back to formula. As the saying says, trust in God. For everything else, I want data. In this case, I want data and a formula. So that's where we need to get to. And shouldn't be that hard to put together. I look forward to the results, but we need to be able to be clear and know what the real cost is
And what
for us
this
to go.
allows us to do is that by agreeing to this, we have until basically April of 2025 to come up with that new plan, because that is when the next budget would be. We're talking about budget that needs to be struck in June of '24. This next budget after that would have to be struck in June of '25. So again, we will hopefully, my guess is the SWOT analysis won't come in time for us to make meaningful change for fiscal '25. That's why we're asking for this, so that we have time to make meaningful change for fiscal '26.
Josh, and just to say, if we kept the price per call, that data, it's going to be relatively close, to the same thing. So the price per call of what we had at 366 is no longer an appropriate number per the city of Salisbury, per the data that they gave us.
And per the data.
Why not? I don't understand
Because-
that. I
Go
haven't
ahead,
seen
Andy.
anything
Because
that
of your
suggests-
costs. Go ahead.
I haven't seen anything that suggests what your actual costs are for fire, EMS, and non-transport EMS. Some of the information that we have from the city says that you can't afford it, that you've lost state and federal grants, et cetera, but the actual numbers are what we seem to be throwing $1 million out there, and literally pulling $1 million out of the county is literally being asked to pull $1 million out of thin air, because it's an easier process than trying to evaluate cost per service.
Are we paying that anyway? Like, after a year, we're paying that million already?
I guess I just don't understand. I guess my question is really quick. I don't understand, if we're so adamant about the price per call, why are we only making the city of Salisbury do that?
Well, that would be possibly one of your projects for 2025 to be.
Right, which we're planning
How you
on,
wanna
especially
deal
with the
it.
SWAT.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like we're really getting ahead of everything here, because we haven't even evaluated our own 2025 budget yet. And yet you're talking about committing right now to something like that. We've got over 6 million in recurring expenses just from last year.
But we also have they are currently not operating under an agreement at all.
Well,
They-
we
no,
just,
they-
we just agreed to a 366
Yeah, but based
charge
on,
and $1
yeah, but if
million.
you look at that agreement.
Right.
That agreement ran through data of December 31st, 2022.
Right.
So what we're asking for is for this agreement to run through data of December 31st, 2023. We always have funded in arrears so that we have the ability to budget for that arrears. That is our request as a county. That has never been a city request. They would gladly get it at the time they're running that. The county has always requested that we fund in arrears. So they have now run 10 months for county residents without an agreement because there is nothing covering that data period.
I don't think this
Yes,
council has any problem at all staying with the agreement where we just, it wasn't
the
that
city-
long ago.
but the
where we did
city
30
has a problem
excuse me,
with
Pam,
it.
Where we did a 30% increase on what
And-
they were getting
and
before. And we're looking for data, is what I'm trying to say. We are looking for data.
So what I'm trying to say is the data that both myself and myself and administrative staff have looked at is that
And the meetings that we've had with the city, I mean, we've had 10 meetings.
we have looked at the data that they have provided us and their costs. Their costs are in their budget. Their costs are in their audit. If you look at the number of calls that they're running in those districts that aren't just city-county residents, but county only, their costs for those to maintain the level of coverage that our residents are currently getting is more than the $300 that we were paying. The county has benefited, yes, for the last 5 years, having it at that rate. Do we need to up that rate? Yes.
Right, and we just did.
But
it was
it's
a
not
30%.
enough. We have not upped it.
It was a 30% increase, and now you're asking for a 100% increase. Where did it get so off base and so
Because
skewed?
the county-
that we
the
went
county
from a 30%
was-
increase to now a 130%.
The county did strike a very advantageous deal for ourselves.
I'm not talking about 2017. I'm
But
talking about
that
a year
is where
ago.
it's all based
I'm talking
on.
about a year ago, though.
But they agreed and we agreed to 30%, but it did not reflect the costs a year ago. It reflected a 30% increase, but not their costs.
Go.
I have,
I've got a couple things. First thing is, not all these calls that the city makes or any of the county fire departments make, as far as that goes, EMS, the county pays for, or the city pays for, because they get reimbursed from the insurance companies. Last ambulance call I had was like $500 and some to go from Parsonsburg to the hospital. So, you're sitting here saying that, these calls cost you this much money. You get reimbursed from them.
So do the volunteers.
You get reimbursed from Salisbury. Salisbury charges for ambulance calls.
Yeah,
But so do the
so do the volunteers.
Yeah, I understand that.
And you're still giving them that
Right,
amount of money.
But you're getting that pay, from the insurance
We can
company.
resolve this very easily. We can cover all of our calls so nobody has to come into the city, and we don't have to service the county.
Yeah, we're sitting here having a discussion, and you're sitting here making threats.
No, I'm not. I'm just making a point.
You know.
It's your accountability to take care of the people who live in the county outside of the city.
Well, you've made
Is
an
that right
agreement
or
to take
wrong?
care of them.
Is that right or wrong?
You've made an agreement with the county in your
It's not-
place to take care of them.
Well, we don't have a signed agreement right now.
Jack, we're here to have a discussion. I'm not making any accusations. I'm just telling you the way it is. You get paid for ambulance calls, correct or no?
Yes. So our $13 million that is what it costs to operate the Salisbury Fire Department is offset by roughly $4.5 million of revenue. There is still an expense to the city of $9 million to operate our 3 fire stations.
Is that 9 million to operate out in the county?
To operate in general.
Okay.
So
Operate in the
when about
districts.
30% of that $9 million is for calls outside of the city, that is $2.7 million to run those calls. That is true numbers. Like, we can slice it as a set allocation, which makes more sense. We can look at all of the numbers, but it is well beyond $2 million that the county should be paying the city right now. It is north of $3 million in some estimates. It's 2.5 in other estimates. We are asking to be treated the exact same for this year, for us to continue as is. We can go through the SWOT analysis. We can analyze everything, and we can continue providing services that we did today and yesterday and tomorrow.
Okay. Thank
Why
you.
don't we come up with the same, well, I mean, we have a plan. It's a 30% increase just a year ago. I don't know why we don't keep that. I don't know why this is being forced on us before we even looked at our 2025 budget. I don't, we can agree to stay with the same exact deal that we had before.
The city cannot, we can agree as the county, the city is not willing to agree to that.
We can't afford it.
But my argument, Jack, is no different than the cities. We haven't even seen our 2025 budget yet, and yet you're asking us to commit another $1 million, which you can
Well,
see us
you're
one time. Maybe
you're
we
asking
can.
us
We
to
don't
provide
know.
a service with no agreement.
Well, no, we're okay with that agreement. We just made an agreement for a 30% increase, not even a year ago, and that's what I don't get. I haven't seen any statistics that show us that 30% wasn't adequate.
You just heard it.
What I heard was everything switched to an antiquated system that the county has.
You
It
just
says
heard-
it's an antiquated system, but let's use that to move forward with an additional $1 million.
No, you just heard their overall numbers. Their overall numbers are the $13 million less 4, so now you're at 9. 30%, and I think it's actually more than that because it's 37%.
37, right.
But I don't do that in my head, sorry. But 37% of $9 million is higher than 2.
Right.
So right there, at the highest level, is we can say that our county residents within the city fire districts are benefiting from the city having those services available to them for over $2 million. We're asking for $2 million in fiscal '25 so that we can get the SWOT analysis and we can analyze it and put it forward as appropriate, however it comes out.
Let me just say, okay, so I just want to cut in. So when we pay per call, we're already paying what we're going to be paying coming up. With this agreement, potentially, when you add up all the calls and when you do the $300, multiply that by the amount of.
No, you'd have to up it to the $450 to $500 a call to get to the $2 million. But what we're saying is that no other department within the county has to operate under a $300 per call. So if we put them on a level playing field of the higher ones.
Let me rephrase that. I don't think you understood what I meant. So I didn't mean per call basis. I mean, well, yes, I do, but from the money that, okay, we already give them somewhere around $300,000. When we add, when they go into the county, right, outside of the city, we get charged for that call.
Currently, there is no
That's what
deal.
part of the $300,000 is. That goes toward. Does that make sense? Yeah. So how we got to the $1 million was a per call basis, and that ended up being roughly $930,000 with some additional costs. That got us right to $1 million.
So we're only paying how much is it?
$333,000
$333,000
to each fire
for
department.
each
in
fire
Salisbury.
department to get how many calls of service throughout the entire county?
4,300,
4,300.
4,300 calls,
37% of your total calls.
right? So I'm just, trying to say, I mean, I'm fine with it if we can afford it. and we
We will
can't
ensure
we can't
that
afford
it's-
somebody dying of a heart attack because we couldn't provide them enough money. I mean, I'm just.
James, you just asked a good question, if we can afford it. I got something else here, and I hope I don't get knocked down and threatened on this. Back in April 13th of '23, there was a meeting, I think Laura, you, John, Jack. Julie, you made the statement twice or three times when I'm reading these minutes that says the county can do $1 million. The county can do $1 million. The county has $1 million, and that's what we were paying already. That's all they can afford, I think. We'll just see here, yeah. So we did a balanced budget this year. And I know we've had to do some budget transfers for some shortfalls in estimates and things like that. But where does the other $1 million come from?
So we have 1.7 million in our balanced budget right now. We have $1.7 million in contingency. So council, we budgeted $1.7 million worth of contingency. So $1 million, with just the revenue we currently have, we could cover that $1 million more without another dime of revenue. And still have a healthy contingency of $700,000 because in most years we only have about $700,000 to $1 million in contingency. So fiscal '24, we budgeted $1.7 million of contingency. Without another dime of revenue, we could balance our budget and still give them $2 million with no other cost changes.
Well,
We
maybe
have
I'll
that
ask
amount
this
because-
question.
We have that amount because we drew down 10 million from reserves.
Yeah.
But we drew down 10 million for reserves for $17 million worth of projects. We are not spending a dollar of that contingency of 1.7 is not coming from reserves. That $10 million that we pulled down is paying for capital projects that the council agreed to.
I understand that.
Again, so you can't say that the $10 million of fund balance is funding contingency when the $10 million is actually funding capital costs. So again,
But you have that because we've released that burden on the capital costs.
but we also could have made the decision to not spend $17 million worth of capital and still had additional funding. So again, we don't budget operating costs, which this would be, from fund balance. And we did not fund contingency from fund balance. We funded $7 million worth of capital projects from operating costs, from operating revenue. So again, I believe that this is affordable. It is a stopgap to get us through a SWOT analysis and is the appropriate way for the council and the city to move forward for a one-year deal.
Joe, were you going to say something?
Well, I guess if Mrs. Giordano said we only had $1 million then, were you not aware that we had enough money back then to make that, you made that statement? I mean,
We had enough to cover it. Well, I mean, I remember council was very distraught about upping the amount
I'm
30%. So
no, I'm
yes,
talking
we
about
did
what
have
you,
it.
I'm talking about what you said here. She said the county has $1 million, and you said that more than once in these minutes. And what I'm saying,
I don't know
were you
why we're
aware-
talking about
were you
last year's
aware at
budget.
the time that we had enough money to cover this?
We do. And so now we're doing this, and Pam is saying we have enough to cover this, too.
That's not what I said.
I have something to say. So Billy brought a couple of us in to talk about this agreement. The contract's been expired. We need to get a signed contract, and we need to do it ASAP. You know, if I was watching Pac 14 right now, I'd be really concerned about this if my house was in this fire district. It scared me a little bit. Am I going to have coverage? If I have a heart attack, is somebody coming? You know, we got to get this right. You know, we're talking around in circles. We know the contract needs to get done. We need to get it done. We need to come to an agreement, whatever that looks like. But this is,
Well, Well, I think when we chatted, I felt that you and Mr. Merritt, when we were in there, both agreed that it seems fair that they should be treated the same as all the other districts. I mean, from what we had discussed.
I actually told you, I thought your ideas were good. The only concern I had, I would like to see the SWOT analysis before we make such a commitment.
For 3 years, but you were okay with the one.
I was, but I was thinking about it. That's still a big commitment. An increase of $1 million.
But the two things that you're talking about, signing a deal and SWOT analysis, those are mutually exclusive at the moment. We will not have a SWOT analysis in time to sign an immediate deal. The SWOT analysis, they're talking 7 to 8 months.
Yeah, it won't be, well, we're trying to push it at 2 times a month, so it should be done by April or
I
May.
think that's the elephant in the room. I
And so
think
what I'm-
some of us are sitting up here wanting that SWOT analysis
But-
before you make a decision, but we need to make a decision now.
So
True.
that's
Need a
why we're saying,
contract.
and that's why we're saying 1 year.
What are we
not
going
3.
to do, Councilman Bigger? What are we going to do if that SWOT analysis comes back and it says that we need to be paying the city $3 million?
That's what we're looking for.
Right.
Data. We're not arguing about anything except the fact we don't have
So
any
is
data.
the city's data
We're
not
just being
valid?
told, we're just being told that it's easier to come up with just giving them
Well,
another
no, it's
million.
not just easier, but my question is the city's data not valid? So are we saying that their numbers are not valid and we
Their
need state to
data
come in?
doesn't separate EMS from what I've seen. The data doesn't seem to
lumped-
separate
it's
EMS
lumped
from
in.
fire. A lot of the city's data revolves around explaining what their costs are and why we should pay those costs.
I think Joe asked a question, which I think we haven't answered properly, maybe, about where are the other costs? Well, also, the city provides to the county hazardous materials, the equipment and the personnel. They also have a fireboat. They also have a dive team that services the county residents. Not just the county residents necessarily in the fire district, but all of the county residents, if needed.
When's that fireboat ever been used? I can't even recall it ever being used.
It's been used.
Has it?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. Yep.
May I say something? I look at these lump sum Station 1, Station 2, and Station 16, but the calls is 1507, but what type of calls? I think that's what we're saying. What type of calls and what did it cost? What was the length of time that you spent on the call? EMS, same thing, non-transport. What time frame did you spend on that non-transport? Then the transport, did you have to give them CPR, shock them, like emergency? How long did you spend on that particular issue? I think what should have happened is that all the council members up here, because I'm new, and I know how important the fire district is, but all of us should have been part of the meetings that were being held before any decisions were made. The city council members also should have been a part of it. The fire chief should have been a part of it. The county executive and John should have been all a part of this, and everybody worked something out. Because I'm looking at Willard's with 147 calls, and they're getting, $668,000. I'm looking at Allen having 172 calls. I don't know what the calls are. They're getting the same amount of money. So we did a budget. I voted on a budget, in June, July, whenever it was. And are we saying, I got to get an understanding, are we saying that we sign this agreement and then we write a check for them for $1 million?
So when we signed the last agreement, the one that just happened, the $1 million one, we cut them a check for fiscal '24. We are done with fiscal '24 payments. We gave them $998,000.
That's what it was.
Actually, $999,998, I think, is what we ended up giving them on this check that we cut them a week ago or 2 weeks ago for fiscal '24 for calls run in calendar '22. Okay? We are looking at setting our number for fiscal '25. We will not be paying them anything additional in fiscal '24. We will not cut them another $1 million. This would pay them in fiscal '25 and allow the county, the city, the fire districts to all receive the SWOT analysis and spend the next set of months to create the future for Wicomico County as a whole. So again, we are setting, what this agreement does is it does not up anything for fiscal '24, it ups something for fiscal '25. But even if we get the SWOT analysis in April that we're pushing for, that is not going to be sufficient time to make any changes for fiscal '25.
That's if we get it in April. I mean,
And that's
we're
the best
thinking
case
May.
that we get it. I mean, we saw it tonight with the fire service tax credit. We've been working on that for months. And you would think that if we got a SWOT analysis in April that we could implement something by June? I don't believe that's possible. I believe it's possible to implement it by June of 2025. So what we're trying to do is buy ourselves a year based on their costs, based on looking at them as an equal to all the other districts. They would get this. They would get the one of their price if we did 668 versus their current call volume in station 16, they'd get 387 per call. That's the lowest across all of them. 443, there is one that's actually lower. Fruitland makes 392. But then they get the first, the third, and the fifth lowest cost per call.
What type of call?
Every type of call.
So every type, if a fire engine goes out, they get $392.
But again,
But an ambulance gets more than that.
But that's why I'm saying is that we're asking for a 1-year flat fund, because we're going to come to you for flat funding for the other districts in '25 as well, because there is no way we are going to be ready to change this model in fiscal for fiscal '25.
Ms. Shaney, and I think I know what you're saying too. So let's just say Salisbury's call was 392. What's happening though is that when Powellville goes out, that cost is costing the county over $1,000 because of the amount of funding that we're giving them. So yes, Salisbury might be 392, but then a fire call at another fire station is $1,100 or $1,200 based on the amount of money that we're giving them. And also, there were a lot of people involved in this situation. So I don't want you to think that we didn't have the community involved. So first and foremost, we have met over 10 times with the city. So you have gotten a call from Mayor Heath about this exact situation. I had Councilman Merritt.
Yeah, but I didn't have a meeting with them. I'm talking about face-to-face meetings. I get a phone call.
Okay.
I'm the type of person like look at people in the face.
Okay.
And if I had any questions, understand, I didn't have this information.
Sure, I'm just saying, a phone call was made.
Yeah.
They came into my office. Mr. Wynn came into my office. At one point in time, President Cannon was in my office. The fire chiefs have been in there. So it wasn't just something that was just decided upon. This has been for 10 months now that this has been.
And I know by being on the city council, how important the fire district, because I support the fire department, always have. But my problem is, since I'm on the county side now, I think that all the players, if I have to vote on something, I want to be part of something.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I wasn't part of the planning. I didn't have the opportunity to ask questions, get a full understanding, because when I see 1507, just a number out here, I don't know if it's far going to a house far. I don't know if it's an ambulance call.
We were showing very basic numbers for you to understand.
See, and that's the problem I have.
I understood.
You know, that's the problem I have. And if I was in a meeting with everybody that's playing, I could say, well, what was that call? You know, was it an ambulance call? Was it this?
We also don't pay the other districts.
per call.
different based on, and that's why I'm saying.
And you all make this money, you have somebody making 147 calls and you give them all that money.
Well,
I don't understand that.
But that's how we do it. Like, that's
I
what the
don't
county
understand.
does.
See, I
It's
don't
not me
understand
giving it
that.
to them. This has
I don't
been
understand
how we've
all
done
that.
it.
See,
That's why we're doing the SWOT analysis, to possibly change this in the future.
Plus, also the city council members, and I don't want to speak for them, and I know that there's some changes that are going to be made and that might be in already tonight, but the city council members that I have spoken to are very frustrated and know that they've been underfunded, and I think that they support, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think Mayor Heath, you could probably speak for them, that they have spoken to you about being underfunded. So there are a lot of stakeholders that have been involved in this process.
We're talking about price per call, and then we'll go back to we're paying a certain rate to all the volunteers, and that's the trouble. You know, we can't have it both ways.
Well, and that's why we're
And
saying
that's what we're trying to do.
But that,
You can't have
okay,
it both
so
ways.
the way we are trying to do, yes, we are trying to move the city off of a price per call for 1 year so that we can look at the fire service as a whole for all 14 based on this SWOT analysis. We need this SWOT analysis. Yes, we need it. But we also need to sign a deal.
I totally
Pulling the city off a price per call basis, you're paying them an extra $1 million.
Okay, so
To
I
get
would like,
off that
I would
system.
like to put that, we'll put them at a price per call basis.
Yeah, take the
at
$2 million and divide it. There you
And
go.
divide it.
I
There's
did,
a
it's
price.
double, it's double.
It is.
Okay, well, then that's the
It's
price.
double the 30% we just agreed to a year ago.
And that's
Okay,
the
but
price.
that's their price. So what do you want me to do? That's their price.
Let's talk about the big elephant in the room. Mayor, not to put you on the spot, but is your intentions on if we can't sign a deal for what you're telling us it's going to cost us, or what it's going to cost the city, that you're not going to service outside of city limits? Is that what we, or is that the elephant in the room here?
No, it's not the elephant in the room. It's just we have to make a determination whether we have to reduce our costs in order to offset the money that we don't have.
And I ask you that because I'm not going to sit up here and make a decision that is not going to provide EMS or fire service for any citizen in this county. I mean,
I totally agree. I was a fireman for 35 years, volunteer. So I know what it means. And I'm not going to do that willy-nilly. But I will tell you, we have to reduce our costs. And there's only one way of doing that.
I mean,
We don't have a problem. I mean, you say you don't have a contract. We can maintain the contract that we currently have that was just, let me finish, that we just increased. And again, 30%, however you want to look at that. And not only that, but this is November. And we've only got 4 or 5 more months left in this fiscal year, at which point in time we will be reevaluating our entire budget and reevaluating what we're going to pay all of our fire departments and reevaluating what we're going to pay the city of Salisbury. That's why I don't understand the rush. We just want to see what our revenues are going to be. We have delegates and senators that have warned Wicomico County and said you need to be very careful because fiscal year 2025 may not be what you want it to be, and your revenues may go through the floor. We've been warned about that. We're just trying to be responsible.
We have been providing the service to the citizens of the county outside the Salisbury Fire District for 10 months with no arguments, discussions, negotiations. That's what we've done.
Andy, do you have? Excuse me.
The citizens of Salisbury, of the county that are outside, that are in our fire district outside of on the county side, they have not seen a reduction at all. And we've gone above and beyond. How many contracts would you let go that weren't signed for 10 months?
I totally agree with you. The contract we should have a contract in place right now, but we don't, and it's 10 months expired.
And how many people would I sign?
We got to get this
and
contract
that's
up to
the
date.
contract that they're willing to sign at this
But how many contracts would I ever sign when I agreed just to pay somebody an extra $1 million?
That was for 2022
wouldn't
calls.
do
We're
it.
talking about 23.
We have no problems with this. We've got your 22 numbers. We don't have the 23 numbers yet. But somebody sat down and said 366 was a good number and 4 whatever was a good number. I don't know how that
Those
happened, but it
people
was
aren't here.
signed by both parties.
But those people aren't here anymore.
But it was signed. is what I'm-
But that was then, this is now.
And this is now, I'm hoping to see-
$530 per call. If you want a per call basis, $530 per call, or it's $2 million. It comes out to the same thing. Again, it's been 10 months. Guys, this is a simple analogy I've told everybody.
It hasn't been on our table.
This
for
is
10
the
months.
burger that we are cooking that you've come to ask for. Don't ask us to change our ingredients. Don't ask us to change in that stuff. If you want the burger that we are serving, this is the cost. It is as simple as that. There's nothing else. There's no negotiations of 30%. Now this is what it costs for us to continue the service. We raise taxes in the city of Salisbury by 5%, which is having impacts on our election right now. You are not getting a discount this year. I don't know how to say this any other way. We can talk about this as much as you want to. We can provide all the numbers you want to. This is the cost for the City of Salisbury Fire Department to provide services to county residents in the Salisbury Fire District, period.
All right, well, we'll think about it then, okay? We'll think about it. I don't want to go too long here. We're already at 9:30.
I do want to say one thing.
Sure.
I had the pleasure of working with a lot of these guys on the street when I worked for the sheriff's department, and they do a fantastic job, first class, and I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate it. And we're going to get this right. We're going to figure it out, and we're not going to stop until we get it right.
And I just
And
want
I
to say,
appreciate your hard work.
well, and I appreciate you willing to work with me. I just want to say, I'm happy that we had this, and I am sorry that it went this late, but I want you to understand the rock and hard place that I'm in right now, because we're having this on one end of the table saying, this is the price no matter what, and then we are going to have an issue at budget time if I sign this one-year agreement and bring it to you in April. So I'm asking for your help. I'm asking for grace. I'm asking for you to help me here. And it can't be tabled. I know we're going to discuss it and we'll have it, but it can't be we're just, okay, well, we'll just talk about it. I just want to let you know, like, I would like this signed or figured out within the next. If you want to see an agreement that has the price per call, it's fine. It's going to be the same cost. But I'll give that to you if you want to see a price per call. But the cost of 366 is no longer appropriate. The cost has gone up just like everything else in this country.
What happened to the city of Salisbury that a cost per call went from $300 to $366 and now needs to be over $700? What happened to it?
Our budget in our fire department went up 50%, $4 million in 3 years. That's
Your
what
budget.
happened.
I understand
I know,
that. Your
and that's,
budget,
and that's what,
Andy.
and that is the fire
Your budget.
service that you are receiving. You're receiving these guys.
All right, well,
I would suggest, Shaney, that maybe you should have a meeting with the people in front of us, one-on.
You talking to me?
Yeah, sure,
No, I'm not
yeah.
supposed to have a meeting. We
No,
all
no,
should have a meeting.
no. I mean, like,
No,
just.
I already know about this stuff.
we've
I'm
had-
talking about we should have a meeting before we got in this argument. All of us should have been part of, if it was number one meeting, to get some understanding and those questions asked. Then when it came, we should have had all the answers, then signed the agreement. We didn't do that. We should have met with the city council. We should have met with the mayor, and we had the county executive and all the council members in the city and county meeting together in a
Well, that's
round
what this
table
is.
discussion.
That's what this
No,
is.
they don't have the city council here.
I know, but
But we need to have all the players.
Well, they have an election tonight, so
Well,
that's why they're
I
not
know
there.
they couldn't be here, but you have another day. You don't have to have it on the day of the meeting, but you're supposed to have all the players here.
Well,
The
keep in mind,
chiefs,
this
the
was supposed to be
Salisbury
done in
Police
October, and it was pulled. So this was
Well, I
supposed to be
can't
done in
help that.
October.
It should be, you should have a meeting with everyone so everybody could hear the same thing, not secondhand information. We should hear the same thing. I just have a problem with not being a part of a decision I'm supposed to vote on. I have a problem with that. And I know how important the agreement,
There's no vote tonight.
There's no vote tonight. Good. I'm glad it
There's no
wasn't.
vote tonight, it's just a work
If I could
session.
I'm
make
glad it wasn't.
We're in a work session.
Just reassuring the
This is
public,
all discussion.
while we
Yeah,
have
thank
these
God.
discussions,
There's no vote.
no services is going to be donated to our county residents.
I can't guarantee that because I'm leaving office next week after next. and this, I don't know who's going to win tonight, who's going to be the mayor, but if the wrong person gets it, he may be telling you, or she may be telling you, that they are going to pull it.
Can I say one more thing before we close? Sure.
They tried it
Question.
before.
Andy,
Do it.
you have a billing mechanism in place for billing insurance companies, correct?
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
they do.
Well, wait a minute.
Well, because I work for the city of Salisbury.
Oh,
They have a
okay.
billing,
All right, okay.
they have a billing impact.
Vote on it.
So
yes.
you had.
Pam doesn't do their billing too.
No, but when I
yes,
was with the
yeah.
city, there was a billing mechanism. That billing mechanism, I do not believe, has been ended.
Can I finish?
Yes.
Yeah. If there's a problem with providing service, why don't you bill the county per call? I mean, it seems like it's pretty easy to do until we get this settled.
But we currently don't have a budget to pay for anything more than the $1 million that we currently have. What we're trying to do is resolve.
You're not going to have to pay it. If they bill us by the month, you're not going to have to pay $1 million all one time.
We already did. Our budget's gone for fiscal '24
Yeah.
because the contract,
But we'll have to do a transfer then.
no,
like we've
those
done.
aren't transfers. Those are budget amendments.
Well, budget amendments, whatever you have to do. But, if there's, we don't want services to end, correct?
Jeff, I don't want to leave Darren out.
He's kind of
way.
There's been enough said.
He was sitting there all quiet. Just, you don't see the number of calls going down?
No.
Yeah.
We
About how much do they go up a year?
We average 40 to 50 calls a day, and
And
that fluctuates.
how much does that change over a year's time? It goes up by 10%?
Yep. We'll just-
But anywhere from
Yeah,
8 to 10%.
yeah, 8 to 10. I believe one last
10%.
year might have been 13.
Okay.
A lot of times it depends on what the item is. We saw, just in our maintenance account, we saw.
Sorry, if you can go to the podium. Yeah. And state your name so we can have it for the record.
Deputy Chief Chris Obarski.
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as the percentage increases from time to time, yeah, on average, it's anywhere from 8 to 10%. But there were some accounts that we saw last year, for instance, our maintenance account, just in labor alone, went up 45%. Some of the costs of parts went up 35%. So, it fluctuates. It just depends on what it is. So,
Cool. Thank you.
yep.
Mr. President, I just want to close it out, at least for my last comment here. Once again, I want to thank Mayor Heath for his service. Tonight is the election. You've been a really great advocate for the city. I appreciate all that you've done. And I also appreciate your 35 years of service as a volunteer firefighter. You have more insight and ability than most, any of us, all of us probably combined on this issue. And I really appreciate that, all that you have done and all that you continue to do. So thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Jack.
And enjoy retirement.
You going north? Are you going up north?
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.